They would tell us stories, but I must say, even as a child, I don't think we quite understood or grasped the magnitude of what they experienced and what they went through. It was probably once I got in high school and even more definitive in college that I began to read those things about them and study and began to understand that, wow, we are living among people who were the heroes and heroines. When you look at that case of Briggs versus Elliott, started with Levi Pearson sending the petition in 1947, asking for something as simple as bus transportation for black students. Because at that time, the 30 buses that were available, all of those were being used for white students. And the superintendent, Roderick Elliott, had decided that black students didn't need to have bus transportation because blacks were not paying sufficient taxes. And he thought it was unfair for white folks to have to carry that burden. Well, I guess fast forward to 1948, you had Pearson versus Clarendon County. Of course, that case was thrown out on a technicality because Levi Pearson, they said his property was straddled two different districts. So later, instead of just going for them having equality, Thurgood Marshall? Of course, that case became Briggs versus Elliott because Briggs, of course, name was the first one on the petition. And I might add, it's interesting that the folks who started that were actually members of my home church, which is Liberty Hill AME Church. So we were walking in that kind of history, but just didn't quite understand the magnitude of it. And then Grandpapa, he would sit and he would tell us little things here and there, but we still didn't quite grasp it in terms of what did really Briggs versus Elliott and how it was really the first case that led to Brown versus the Board of Education. So in reality, right there in my home church of Liberty Hill AME Church is where the petition started, and right there in Clarendon County is really what started that led to eventually Brown versus the Board of Education. Ladson Babe Stukes. He was a very, very strong-willed individual and had to be. He was the patriarch for our family. He was a sharecropper at one time, of course, farming and what have you. Maybe part of what moved him away from that was the challenges that he faced because eventually, because his petition was, his name was on the petition after Brown versus the Board of Education, and he saw, like others, that that was not being implemented. So he went on the petition with the NAACP. As a result, he was not able to get seeds or fertilizer. He could not, farm as he wanted to. But one of the statements, and this is in the Jet magazine of, I think it was October 20th, 1955, when they were interviewing Grandpapa, he said to them, "I am not going to take my name off of this petition until Thurgood Marshall comes back and tells me to do so." So he was that kind of person, a person of integrity, a person of conviction. And if Grandpapa believed something, he was going to follow through on it. And so the family, we loved him, we respected him, but we kind of feared him too because he was a very strong family figure. And so when I look back at his life, I'm like, wow, this guy had maybe a second or third grade education, but he fought for the rights of children like me so that we could be able to go forward and get a good education. And to think that later, I would be a graduate of the University of South Carolina, now the first bishop, AME Church bishop to graduate from the University of South Carolina, to go on to get a master's degree and then an earned doctorate degree because he stood up in the 1950s and says it ain't right and we need to provide equality of education for all children. When you look at my beginnings, and I say this, it was a very, very, very humble beginning. I mean, as folks would say, when you look at a person who grew up in a home without a father's presence, but had a strong black mother, who started working his first job outside of the home, first official job, which was during the summer months, but was from 11 at night to 7 in the morning at the age of 10. At the age of 14, working in the hotel restaurant business, and by the time I was 20, I had 10 years of hotel, restaurant, truck stop experience. I used to go in and work at times to load buses at the hotel from 5:30 to about 7:45, and then leave and go to school. And then I would come back in the evening and work from like maybe 4 to about 7, and then go to basketball practice or go to football practice. So I think that the determination, the hard work that was a part of the DNA of Ladson, Stukes, and others, that determination, that will to succeed and to eliminate options for failure, I think all of that was kind of nurtured in that environment that I grew up in, perhaps even without knowing that. For example, one of the things that Ladson Stukes did later after he moved away from sharecropping was to put down pumps. He had a 2-horse wagon, Big Red and Gray were the name of the horses, and me and my cousin Lester would go work to put pumps down. I mean, outside pumps. And one of the lessons I learned from him in that was sometime in life, you've got to be willing to work hard and dig deep to get to the best things in life. Because there were times we would go places to put down a pump, and hey, it was easy. We drilled there, the water shoots up, we put down the pump, and we move on the next time. There were other times we would run into a clay bed, but Grandpapa didn't stop. He would keep drilling. Sometimes we would have one of those things you had to go down through the drill, and we would run into a rock bed. And you would think he would say, okay, let's find another spot. He said, no, what we discovered was when you run into a rock bed, once you break through the rock bed, you got some of the best tasting spring water that you could ever want. So working with him doing that, I learned in life, you got to be willing to work hard. You got to be willing to dig deep if you're going to really get some of the best things out of life. So I think that when I look at my life, and then ultimately, God just put a lot of the right people in the right place at the right time and helped me to establish the right relationship with them. And so one of my favorite scriptures has always been, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. And so I think young people looking at my life, hopefully they'll look at it like Elder Nelson said, and say, now for this guy to have made it, to be where he is today, if he can do it, if God can bring him to that level, I believe I can do it, and I believe God can bring me to that level as well.